I think this is probably one of the coolest tests that I've done on camera with an LLM, to be honest with you, which will be like, well, what have you done off camera? Don't worry about it. Google has updated the Gemini 3 DeepThink model, which is one of, if not the smartest model in existence. And this is a model that has existed for a while in various forms, but it's not something you see routinely mentioned, and I believe a big part of that is because it is locked behind the Ultra subscription to Access, which seems to vary in price, but I believe it's like $250 a month without any discounts, so it is one of the more expensive subscriptions for an AI model. I mean, you get a bunch of other stuff too, like more storage and things like that, but it is kind of expensive to use this model, and that is kind of justified. If we look right here in the subheading to this announcement blog post, our most specialized reasoning mode is now updated to solve modern science, research, and engineering challenges. So I almost feel a bit bad in the thought of perhaps running a browser-based operating system through this extremely intelligent and inevitably pricey to run model. So today's testing is going to be hands-on with Gemini 3 DeepThink, but we're perhaps going to do a different suite of prompts that will be designed to push this model further in ways that are not reflectable in less potent models, I guess could be said. So let's take a quick peek at this. It's really a rather short announcement blog post, and we'll jump into some fun and heavy testing. Now we see a couple of things giving us some insight into the performance of this model, and we can see right here it continues to push frontiers of intelligence, reaching new heights across the most rigorous academic benchmarks, including, and then we have a few things here. Now interestingly to note, this apparently does seem to be the gold medal performing model in the IMO. Now previously they had released, I think, a DeepThink capability, but it was only the model that had scored bronze or silver. Do not 100% quote me on that, but I do believe prior to this we did not have access, we being kind of folks like myself, the general public, to this gold medal winning model. So that's kind of exciting. In addition to that, if we are just to pay some mind to this benchmark JPEG right here, which I am happy to see is actually showing Opus 4.6. A lot of benchmarks are still lagging behind and showing Opus 4.5. This model is, to put it rather unscientifically, putting the Mac down on pretty much everything else that is listed here, and we see just comparatively to Gemini 3 Pro Preview as well, the difference in some capability in these benchmarks, in specific ones, is quite stark. So this should be pretty interesting. Oh, did you see that? They just had okay, this is cool. I didn't even see, I like doing these things for the first time on camera, which sometimes comes back to bite me, because look at this, they're actually giving it a sketch and telling it to design an STL for it and then 3D print it. The first test that I was planning to run with this is the 3D printer simulation test, but with the ability to upload STLs and actually print them using the simulated printer. So, all right, we'll definitely have to try this, but this model may be very performant at actually being able to design enclosures and stuff. Maybe not in OpenSCAD. It looks like this would have just print out an STL. I just got very excited because the 3D printer test is something I like to do. This is almost like a real life version of it. Not almost, it is. So that's exciting. So we're going to begin with this 3D printing simulation prompt, but we can see right here that I have added the simulation must allow for upload of STL files. An uploaded STL file should be able to be sliced and printed by the simulated printer. Now, obviously before pressing send, we need to just go in the tools section here, scroll down and enable DeepThink. This happens consistently when I've tested the DeepThink model. People will be like, you didn't use it. If it has the DeepThink button right here that is enabled, we are using the DeepThink model. So I just kind of want to drive that home. I do find Gemini 3 Pro, it's a model I use very consistently, and I am fortunate to have this Ultra subscription, but I find its long context capability and some of the other things I found it excels at, it's essentially paid for its own subscription for me in some of the ways that I've found I use it. So I'm not going to really extrapolate more on that, being that I'm not the type of guy who's going to be like, buy my course and I'll show you how to make money, because those folks are only making money off their courses. With that, let's do submit, and we have DeepThink, so we're going to see something right here reflecting responses with DeepThink can take some time, so check back in a bit. All right, let's take a look at our 3D printer simulation. Fantastic. And just as I said this morning in the Minimax test that I've not actually seen the Bowden tube on the printer, this is very good. Now, we're going to notice this is a bed slinger. So a bed slinger is essentially what we see here in the literal sense, where it is slinging the bed back and forth. These have kind of been phased out in favor of things called Core XY, where the bed stays static aside from moving up and down, and the nozzle moves in a kind of XY motion. They're faster and there's less mass being flung around, so hypothetically they can perform at higher speed. Now, Now, it has automatically started our result here, and I suppose we can pay some mind to this as well, being that I'm more interested in seeing the STL capability, but this is going layer by layer. The infill is working properly. I do respect the way the shadow from the gantry is actually being reflected onto this print here as well, and our nozzle looks very good. All the movement here is smooth. Everything is well done from a logical, I suppose, mathematical perspective. I'm going to pause this simulation. We have our total extrusions. This is going pretty slow, so we can kind of fast forward it there to what it would have done. It does enclose the top of the cube, but that's okay. I suppose for good measure, we'll try our circle, our triangle. And remember, these are kind of less important. I want to try the STL, but also in the relatively small amount of code that this actually did to produce this is in and of itself as well impressive, assuming the STL file does work. And if we just speed this up, perhaps a little faster than real life, we can see it did properly create the pyramid in a pyramid style shape. All right, our next test is to upload the custom STL file. So I did just download one off the internet for the little 3D benchy, which is it's doing it sideways. That's so weird, but it did do it correctly. That's so weird. It did it sideways. This is, it's going to be more odd to folks who are familiar with Benchy and what it is. Look at that. Do you see? Now this will be hard to see. Maybe I'll flip it on video, or maybe I'll just show you a real one. See how it says, like there's text on the bottom? That is actually part of the file. So this did properly do this. And I will say this did a very, very nice job in performing this. Now, I'm not going to have it fix the issue where it's slicing it sideways because I want to use up our allotment of this on novel tasks each time, but I'm going to say this did a stellar job. Let's slow this down and restart the print once more. Good Lord. Okay, there you go. And we can see the Benchy is being printed now fully, although sideways, and it's doing a wonderful job at it. We can speed this up a little more. Almost more impressive than the fact that it can knock this out is how few lines of code it actually did this in. So this was 646 lines of code that it produced, a functional 3D printer result that not only satisfied the core requirements of the built-in shapes, but allowed us to upload an STL file, slice it, and then actually simulate the printing of said file. That is very impressive. So this is a very, very good result. So I am giving it this C++ skateboard simulation game where essentially it needs to create a self-contained program that will run and compile. That is a skateboard simulation. If we scroll down here, we'll just see our DeepThink response feedback. The culmination of this game is basically just to create a little skate park thing, which we've done before in C++. I'm looking for a result that significantly exceeds the previous results I've seen. Additionally, I did slightly modify this prompt just to say that the rider of the skateboard should be a human with separate movement capabilities. So I want to see if it can properly implement the physics one would see when actually watching a real-life skateboard rider. Claude Opus 4.6 had one time actually implemented the pump, which is when you're riding the board, you actually like kick to move it forward. That would be the pump. Additionally, we have some tricks and things like this. So I want to just see how it does in kind of a C++ physics game task. Okay, only 518 lines of C++, so it'll be interesting to see how this does. It does also give us the specific information to actually compile and play this game, which is always good to see, as it just kind of streamlines things. Nice. All right. So we do have some movement. Good. Look at that. It's actually showing the guy pumping on the skateboard. So his leg is moving. The movement here is actually not bad at all. Bailed, landed sideways, lost 50 points. Well, that's a little extreme. Can we get on the rail? I would imagine. There we go. Can we do a trick off? Oh, look at the kickflip. I love these games. I get so excited seeing the tricks get performed. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I just am terrible in real life at skateboarding, so I get some feeling like I'm the one performing said tricks. This is quite well done. All right. In the air, A is to do a kickflip. We'll try that first, which we did see previously. Oh, we have to be in the air, so. Good. Okay. Next up, we have D for a heel flip. All right, and the heel flip is just kind of like an inverted kick flip we see here. I don't know if that's true to life. Next up, we have a shove it. This could be interesting. Yes, it does. All right, cool. Land it. Can we shove it onto the rail? All right, regardless. Next up, we have a nose grab. I'm very curious to see the animation for this. All right, it just has the rider kind of like bend down and hypothetically grab the nose. So that's actually... it does work. Next up, finally, arrows. Oh, just to spin. Okay. I'm going to say it's well done and in so few lines of code as well. This model seems very good at optimization of like code. I see it using the least possible amount of code to get these results, but they're working. So it seems very efficient, even though it takes so long to generate results. All right, well, this is awesome. I want to do something that's like really not something I would try with any other model. So to go over this prompt, I won't read it through verbosely, but essentially the core of this is to visualize the radio frequency waves around me with specific respect to Wi-Fi access points. So it's going to be looking for 2.4 gigahertz or 5 gigahertz networks, trying to understand based on their signal strength where they are, and it's going to be tasked with mapping that into some 3D display of these radio waves, which I don't necessarily know how it will do this. And my concern with whether or not this will actually agree to do this prompt is because you can use things like this to actually see what is in a room by using the waves and like understanding things about them. There are things you can search online. You may have seen them where people use Wi-Fi routers to actually see a visual map of what's in a room. It's very interesting, but this could also kind of trigger some red flags with the model because of this. So that was one concern. Additionally to that, it's going to need to basically tell me if the routers are co-located near one another, which is far more difficult because just using the relative strength of the signal of the router is actually no indication of whether or not they're close to each other, because a router that's like 50 feet that way in one direction may have the same exact signal strength as one that is 50 feet in that direction. So it's going to need to come up with a way to try to guess, or not guess, to try to understand which routers may be near one another. And essentially, I don't specifically know how it will do that, but I'm interested in seeing how it does. It could, because we're going to sample it for basically like 30 seconds or something like that. It could try to see if their signal strengths dip in correlation with one another, which would be indicative of access points actually being near. So say like a person walks by it or a bus or something like that, those signals of nearby routers would likely have the same variation or similar, whereas a router that has the same signal strength that's like 50 feet behind me there would not have that dip. So it will try to like map them visually like that. And then in terms of aesthetics, I've just said 3D aesthetics could be ASCII or Matrix inspired. Dark background, glowing nodes, the aesthetic of peering into invisible RF space. So it'll be interesting not only from like a technical perspective, but also from how it chooses to visually demonstrate this data. I think it'll be cool. Good. So for the topology issue or question that we had left up to it, it's using the Pearson correlation of real-time signal fluctuations. So as I had mentioned earlier, if two signals fade and spike together over time, they're physically pulled together. It also checks the MAC preferences to snap 2.4 and 5 gigahertz channels of the same hardware router into unified clusters. Makes sense, as a lot of routers will use both because some older or cheaper devices don't necessarily support 5 gigahertz. All right, so it's telling me to save the script. It does give us a bit more information here, which I'll just leave on the screen for anyone who can pause and read through this verbosely right now if you'd like, just about how it will implement putting this into 3D space and what it will do with uncertain or kind of like sketchy signals. So with that, it says save this and run it using sudo because it will need network permission. So I will do this now. Okay, so it's launched it and it's serving at localhost right here. Tracking anomalies. Okay, give me, this looks so freaking cool. Okay, so this rotating cube should theoretically be myself. Now I did have it mask the names of the SSIDs so it doesn't just show the names of all the wireless networks around me. I'm now partially regretting that because then it will be harder to actually figure out which is which. Okay, so tracking 54 anomalies. Green is a 2.4 gigahertz band, blue is a 5 gigahertz band, and A would be a 6. Core AP signal strength. The sphere is estimated coverage volume. The blur positional uncertainty. Origin is local receiver. So technically this is my laptop right here. This is kind of hard to parse, I'm going to be honest with you. Again, this will be a massive like ask the audience one, but I'll say visually it did a really nice job right here. And it's just hard to read the text. And we can see right here if we zoom in, the signal strengths are changing in real time, which makes sense. So that one's 35. All right, I probably should have had it use the actual SSID names so I could figure out what the heck is going on. Hidden network. Interesting. So perhaps a network that's not actively broadcasting its SSID, which is just an option in like your router dashboard to not like broadcast it. Let me take a look at the actual script and see if I can get it to not cover up the access point names. Okay, this is good, because I know some of these networks. I mean, I'm familiar with these. These are all the networks near my house, and I am familiar with which ones are located where, more or less, some of them at least. So this is actually really kind of cool to see, and it's finding all the hidden networks and stuff. This just made like the most kick-ass sci-fi like hacking UI I've ever seen. But it's also actually showing us the networks near us and things of the sort. I think it is still working on discovering things, and that's the same one. So like that router over there, that network is just broadcasting both frequencies, as we can see. If I can move around here by the sphere, there's like a blue and a green, so it's putting out 2.4 and 5 gigahertz. Apparently these networks are nearby. There are a lot of hidden networks here, interestingly enough. And then if we zoom in closer, I mean, there's a bunch more that are significantly closer to myself. And these, yep, I'm familiar with a lot of these. So this is pretty cool. Can we, I don't think we can actually click on any of them, but that is okay. I think this is probably one of the coolest tests that I've done on camera with an LLM, to be honest with you, which will be like, well, what have you done off camera? Don't worry about it. But this is this is really quite awesome. That's so cool. This should just sit as like a screensaver on my computer. I mean, it could be cleaned up a bit to make it more visually legible, if you will, but this is just, I'm spending too much time in here because I like the way it looks. And it's also really cool, the way it has like this like diamond thing. Absolutely awesome. Next up, I want to give it an audio related task. So we're asking it to create an digital audio workstation. I guess that's somewhat redundant. App that has the following features: virtual instruments controlled by the keyboard, ability to record from a microphone, ability to record tracks with a grid that reflects the current timescale, ability to quantize recorded tracks into current BPM, aesthetically pleasing UX and UI designed to look modern and sleek, ability to play the results and export them as a WAV file. All right, so here is our digital audio workstation that it's created. I didn't really go through actually right here. I apologize for that. So it said, here's the complete thing. Basically, it features everything you asked for, and then it gave us the script. So, all right, it's named it Waveform Studio. First and foremost, let's just try. I should plug in my speaker for this. All right, we should now. Yep, very good. Rather synth-like. I would have hoped it would have included like a different instrument, which that's okay. I didn't specifically tell it to. So first and foremost, the playhead should probably be at the beginning. I'm just going to press record and play something simple. Thank you. Okay. Now we will press record again, which should stop it. Okay, good. Can we play this back? Good. Now I should be able to, I want to try something real quick because the mic access is upset, but I think it, all right, so it told me to just run it through a server, but there was no reason to. So now let's do 95 for BPM. I'm going to go back and record. Hello, test. Hello, test. Very good. We see the waveform of my voice. Hello, test. Hello, test. Okay, now we need to unarm that and then put the playhead back to the beginning and then try to record with the synth. Hello, test. Hello, test. Very good. And space did start and stop recording as it should, so it's working much better here, just opening it natively in the browser. Now we should be able to quantize our voice, which would just kind of snap it to that BPM. Okay, so it quantized the actual synth here to 95 BPM, which works as well. I wonder if it will try to do it with the voice. Okay, only for the synth, which is fine. Test. Hello, test. Wow. Well. Hello, test. Hello, test. Hello, test. Very nice. Now let's try the export wave. That did work. Hello, test. Hello, test. Very light and simple, but it did work well. And that's really all we could ask for. I would have liked to have seen some more instruments and perhaps, actually, I don't know. I may be being nitpicky, as it did do everything I specifically asked for. So the demonstration they had showed here where they had it actually design and 3D print something was very interesting to me, being that I've done a lot of stuff like this in my testing, which is definitely the reason why they chose that specific demonstration. But being that that is the case, I want to do my own take on that. So I've given it this sketch of a truck that I actually designed this little truck body in Fusion 360. I have it. It's on my shelf over there. But I shouldn't have said that. I should have lied and be like, no, I'm going to 3D print it and then hold that up. But regardless, so I basically just had the prompt modified to work with this specific sketch of this truck. Everything else is the same as we saw in this demonstration right here to go from sketch to actual STL. And while I don't know if I will actually 3D print this once it gives us the STL, we can put it into our 3D printer simulation and then see how well it would have printed in this, as this is pretty lifelike. So it'll be interesting to see how it performs with this. And that test was very interesting to me, being that I did in fact pioneer it. So I would be interested to see how it does with this. And I figured I would, just because this takes a while, I would show the actual little thing that I made. So this is, I actually designed this in CAD. So my first time designing a car body, and I was very pleased with the result. Although simple, it was inspired by a variety of different trucks from the late 90s. Also, I did name it, as we can see back there maybe, the Masher. So it was designed to be a monster truck body. I didn't really end up ever doing anything with it except putting it on my shelf so that I could look and admire my own design skill. So it seems this is concluded, but it's, I think, a bit different in how it presented the response to us than I've seen prior to this in our testing with DeepThink. So it just spit the script out. It didn't say anything, and it gave us the option to look through some of its thinking, but I'm just gonna, oh, I can exit that. So I think the thing to do is just try this. So here is, based on the sample they had there of the 3D printing thing, the truck STL that it is to generate render in the web browser and then actually allow us to download and print this. So this is based off of the sketch, and I do have to say, okay, so the overall length is 475 millimeters, which is pretty long, much longer than the actual truck was in reality, though it was entirely just based off of a sketch. So 475 millimeters, that's divided by 25.4, I think it's, call it like 20 inches. Wall thickness, 3 millimeters. That's very thick, so that would hypothetically take a long time to print, and it gives us an estimated material volume, but this is pretty cool that it just made this basically out of a sketch. Now, the second part of this test is the STL. I don't have anything on this computer to open that, but fortunately, we can now use that to test this with our 3D printer simulation. So let's put it into our 3D printer and see. It's printing the truck. So it just went ahead and generated this little 3D body off of a sketch of said truck, which we gave it. We downloaded that 3D body as an STL, uploaded it to our 3D printing simulator, and now it has printed it in real life, seeing what it would have made right here. That's pretty darn cool. It didn't properly print the roof, but I believe that's a limitation of our printer simulation and not the actual truck model itself, although I can't be quite sure. But that's a really cool digital demonstration of the way they showed it right here to test this. Now, because my usage has not shown me any limits so far, I'm going to have it now create some of the stuff that I was going to hold off on, assuming we weren't going to get enough chances to test this. But it's now time to do the flight combat simulator. We'll see how this does comparatively to all the other models, and this will give us at least a metric with which we're familiar with, as I very often do this test in model testing videos, so it'll be interesting to see how this does differently, if it even does differently compared to the average result. Alright, so we have our plane simulator, and this is only, again, 600 lines of code, a little more than that. I've not seen a result on this that is decent in that few lines. Okay, sky supremacy, that kind of caught me off guard. We'll see what's up here. It's not bad. The plane's going backwards, and it is just showing us the POV of the plane. Overall, I'm not blown away with this. As a matter of fact, I would even go as far as saying I'm a little disappointed, just because I feel like it didn't really put all its effort into this. The enemies aren't loading. We don't see any plane models and things like that. Now, this is essentially probably the wrong type of test for this model, and in the beginning of this video I even mentioned as such that running these sorts of tests through this model is not necessarily applicable, but being that I did not hit my usage allotment, I did want to try something like this so we can see it does have seemingly an infinite map, which is not something I can say for pretty much any other result I've seen. Additionally to that, the clouds look good. The horizon where it meets from the sky to the plane of the ground is not bad at all. The movement is okay. Sadly, there's no real functionality here. There are no enemies, there are no plane models, and overall, you know, it's just something I wanted to run through it just to give some additional like prompt we're used to. But really, that is going to conclude the first look and test of this model. This was definitely very, very powerful. We can see that pretty much everything it did a very competent job at, except the flight simulator. The 3D printer result was arguably one of the best I've seen. Its ability to upload the custom STL file and then print it was fantastic. Additionally to that, of course, just going off of this demo right here, which I borrowed from, which they borrowed from for me, I had it like turn an STL or turn a sketch into an STL. It gave us this. We downloaded it and then we ran it through our simulated 3D printer, which is just kind of wild. And it did a really good job. I do also very much like the lime green color choice for the filament here. Then additionally, I have to go find it in my terminal history. We had our skate game, which was pretty cool. And again, it did it in so few lines of code and it actually made a functional result. There was some movement of the human rider here and the tricks were really cool. We could grind on the rail. I always have a blast playing these skateboard games. I absolutely love them. And it's just, this was a cool result as well. No issues running it and everything worked. Now, the one I want to find is the Wi-Fi mapping, if you will. So this one was just absolutely probably one of the cooler things I've seen. Now, again, I don't know what other models would be able to do this, what models wouldn't, but it made a whole map of all the available networks around us. This seems to be working quite well right now. And then when we zoom into the grid, it shows us what specifically is like right near us. It's just like, this is kick-ass, and it shows where they are as well based off of like a measurement of how the signal changes with routers that are near each other in terms of signal strength, but then it sees how their signal changes if they change in like a correlation. It said it there, it used something, I mean, in the test when I did this, I explained that perhaps more verbosely. This was just a kick-ass result. Really, really, absolutely fantastically cool, and probably one of the coolest results I've ever seen in my time of testing LLMs on video. So this is awesome. With that, I guess that's probably going to conclude our first look and test of Gemini 3 DeepThink. Being that this model is so hyper intelligent just based off of these benchmark charts and things like that, I do think it's very justifiable to clickbait this and say it's insane testing the smartest model ever. And I'll probably do that, so apologies in advance for those of you who get turned off by those sorts of titles. And with that, it's going to conclude this, so if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments, and thanks for watching.